So what exactly recession means? Recession is a significant decline in economic activity, spread across the economy, lasting more than few months. Recessions are visible in real GDP, real income, employment, industrial production, and wholesale retail sales. Recessions are generally defined as 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP economic growth. Simply put, recession is when economies stop growing and start shrinking. That happens when the value of goods and services produced in a country, known as the gross domestic product, declines for 2 consecutive quarters, or half a year. Some recessions are longer, some are shorter, but the average duration of a recession is around 10 months. And it ends when economic growth returns. But this phenomenon may be influenced by many different factors. A pandemic, wars, real estate market crash, the dot-com bubble, they all negatively impact the revenue of the businesses within countries, which often leads to bankruptcy of those companies. When less businesses are standing, this leads to less production and services within the countries. That leads to the increase in the unemployment rate. And this causes the GDP to drop. So, why everyone is thinking that we are threatened by a recession now? The Federal Reserve, aka the Central Bank of the United States, is trying to slow the economy down, in order to curb inflation, which is now raising at its fastest pace since 1981. Last week, the Fed also announced the biggest interest increase since 1994. In the past, each time the market dipped, the Fed was there to protect us. Now the inflation and money printing are so critically high, that the same strategy simply doesn't work anymore. Usually, by printing more money, they sustain the debts, that sustains the economy and keeps everything running smoothly. But this creates a vicious circle. More debts means more money that needs to be printed. More printed money leads to high inflation, which already exceeded 8%. And this leads to the increase in interest rates of the population. In a recession, the Fed has an obligation and responsibility to reduce the negative impact of the crisis and rehabilitate the economy. It does this by printing money and lowering the interest rates. This time, the Fed can no longer do so. Why? Because they are fighting a hyperinflation already. Fed is no longer in control and cannot stop the inflation that easily. Not only they can no longer print money and lower the interest rates to stimulate credit, but they are forced to deflate the money supply and raise the interest rates. All these signs actually lead us to consider we're dealing with another phenomenon in the current scenario of the global economy, known as stagflation. In economics, stagflation, or recession inflation, is a situation in which the inflation rate is high, the economic growth rate slows, and unemployment remains steadily high. It presents a dilemma for economic policy, since actions needed to lower inflation may exacerbate unemployment. Investors are also worried that if the central bank will wind up slowing growth too much, this will put off a recession. And we are already in bear market both for the stock market and crypto market. In a recession, the first assets that investors get rid of are the high-risk ones. Like it or not, crypto assets fall into this category. So, how does the GDP get back to normal? During centuries, countries reached to borrowing more capital to invest in their own infrastructure, to improve anything that can be improved to help the economic growth through production and services. But the GDP was negative for the first quarter of the year, and if it's negative for the second quarter as well, we have a recession confirmed. The date of July 28, 2022 is significant, the finding of the US GDP for Q2. Estimates are already bleak. 0% economic growth. The margin of error for these estimates is 0.5%, so we can easily find ourselves below the 0% threshold, on the negative side, which would confirm the recession. The Fed is defending themselves by saying that none of these signs means that a recession will begin for sure. They state that the job market is still in a strong position and the unemployment rate is close to a half-century low at 3.6%. But here is a quote from Ms. Bovina, the chief U.S. economist at S&P Global. If people are depressed, are concerned about their finances or purchasing power, they start to shut their pocketbooks. But maybe this is all wanted. Perhaps a reset is what they want, that will erase many jobs, products, and services, to make room for new capitalization opportunities, new types of jobs and services. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So, what should we do if the recession is confirmed? The way households prepare for a recession is to save. The downside is, if everybody saves, the economy doesn't grow. And if the economy doesn't grow, the GDP will remain low. But all in all, recessions can bring opportunities as well, alongside the depressive negatives and downsides. It is the opportunity for those who invest now, to make profits after it's over, if done correctly and smartly. Same as happened with those who bought real estate or land after the crash of 2008, when everything was bottom low priced. Probably the most important action steps are to be aware of what is happening, calculate the gravity of the situation, and become more careful with your spendings. Choose wisely where you direct your money towards, and be prepared for the worst to come. If it doesn't come, you didn't lose anything, but if it comes and you're not prepared or even aware, you will find yourself in a very difficult position. Nothing stays down forever. We may be facing extreme challenges like the ones discussed in this video, but life goes on, and we cannot stagnate. I've said it before, when some people are losing money, others see the opportunity to make money. Opportunities occur when we keep a positive mindset and pursue our goals, not when we are constantly blaming on what goes wrong and why it is not going right. So take care, everyone. Wish you all the best.